When I arrived in Istanbul for the first time, the brothers were out of town, so they asked a local friend to come and pick me up at the airport. He did not speak English, he did not speak French, and I did not speak Turkish. I had never met a Turkish person before then. I had never even heard the sound of this language. But we communicated through gestures, glances, and using small signs. I felt very welcomed. I was a stranger, but a person who I did not know and who did not know me was welcoming me like a brother. And it was then that I caught the sense of this welcome, which erases every fear. Celebrating 10 years of our Istanbul project in 2013 is a time of gratitude and a moment of grace. We praise and thank the Almighty and merciful good Lord, because with His Word, His love, and His Spirit, He has accompanied and guided our presence and the service that the Order has entrusted us with here in Istanbul, in this land of Turkey. In 1995, the Minister General, Brother Herman Shaluk, visited the Patriarch of Constantinople, Bartholomew I. It was this meeting that brought about the idea of an international fraternity dedicated to ecumenical dialogue, which would operate in Istanbul, in a country, Turkey, where the majority of the population is Muslim, and which also offered the opportunity to effectively live the Christian-Muslim dialogue. The new fraternity would be welcomed at the convent of St. Mary Draperis in the Tuscan province of stigmatized St. Francis. In Istanbul, the Friars Minor already had a fraternity with almost a century of history, which was worthwhile continuing. Istanbul is like a bridge between East and West, between Asia and Europe. An interreligious city that was well suited to accommodate our project on dialogue. And it was important for the fraternity to be international because the experiences of other international fraternities in Africa and elsewhere had shown us how much an international fraternity is richer and more capable of establishing a dialogue in different contexts and with different interlocutors. Even though the state laws in Turkey do not make direct preaching of the gospel possible, and the vast majority of the population is of another religion, our presence matters, and it means a lot. This land is the cradle of the Church.
Soprattutto a livello di organizzazione di annuncio del Vangelo a partire della comunità di
This is the land that welcomed the apostolic preaching of John and Philip and spread the word of the gospel starting from the communities of Antioch, Paul of Tarsus, Barnabas of Cyprus.
Predicazione apostolica di Giovanni, Filippo e poi anche Paolo.
The meaning of the presence of the Friars Minor in a big city like Istanbul is first of all to live the mandate of St. Francis.
Il mandato di San Francesco, come San Francesco lui è andato.
Like St. Francis went to meet the Muslims in a historical period where no one would have found it reasonable to live and communicate outside of Christianity. In this way, our presence in this secular Muslim country has a great meaning. To meet one another. For more than 40 years in my ministry, I chose the word meeting, motivated moreover by Muslims who used it. What is requested from everyone, but especially from us Friars Minor, is to meet people and live with them as brothers. One day, the Lord will ask me what efforts did I make so that others may understand that I am their brother, thanks to Jesus. The Order has complete faith in us as a fraternity, and it has asked us to continue Franciscan life in this land and to seek ways of dialogue through creativity and imagination, as the Minister General, Giacomo Bini, used to say. As Friars Minor, we have a duty and a responsibility to say that it is possible to live the gospel, to live as a Franciscan in Istanbul, in Turkey. The Order also expects a certain amount of creativity in the structures to be invented by this fraternity. This is a prophetic fraternity, which will have to regularly invent new ways and new forms of dialogue.
El desafío de este tiempo, sobre todo,
the challenge today is not to come and convert, but above all, to walk together, which is, in short, the spirit of Assisi. To create the opportunity to walk together. The greatest challenge is to tell the world that we can live together, that we recognize the differences, that we also recognize the similarities, and that we take these similarities and celebrate them. And we learn to live with our differences.
Y que aprendemos a vivir aún con nuestras diferencias.
Our fraternity in Istanbul was founded starting from 2003. Over the years, the community has gradually grown, and it now consists of 7 brothers from countries across 4 continents. from the Congo in Africa, from Korea in Asia, from France and Italy in Europe, from Argentina and Mexico in South America. I remember that in a crowded meeting with Muslims, I heard one of them ask, "But this black person, is he really a monk?" And soon after, a Korean fellow brother arrived, and I heard someone say, "Look, there's also a Japanese." It must have been truly amazing for them. Until then, they had probably only met European Christians. Our presence has testified that the gospel is for everyone. The most difficult thing for me was mainly the fact of not knowing what I was supposed to do here in Istanbul. That is to say, to leave Argentina, my province, that is so much in need of brothers. There are so few of us and so many important commitments. And instead, I moved here without knowing what I would be doing. In some way, yes, you can sense what it means to be in a situation of interreligious and ecumenical dialogue. But no one knows what we come here to do, and this is a challenge. Starting from our fraternal life, we live a cultural dialogue every day, with every step. To live fraternity in such a small but very international community makes us come together even more and gives us great strength. This context requires us to lead a very sincere fraternity life. A life of fraternity in which to live happily and with profound communication. Everything that surrounds us, people, facts, leads us to constantly evaluate how to improve everything we are doing. Fraternal life is carried out in a simple way. According to the convent's moments for saying prayers, for meal times, for community meetings and recreational activities in the evenings. During our work, personal training is particularly important in order to examine in depth the meaning of our presence among Islamic believers and the brothers of Eastern and Protestant churches, because we should not take for granted that we know what it means to be Greek Orthodox, Syrian, Armenian, or Protestant. The greatest challenge for me was learning the language. You cannot work towards dialogue without understanding what the other person is saying. So I studied Turkish, and I am only now able to express myself better. When we speak with them, using their terms and their topics, we are welcomed in a very friendly manner. After all, we are all like this. When the other is interested in you, you yourself feel closer to him, especially emotionally. It is a very comforting community life. And It is comforting to discover that all the work that has been carried out in these past 10 years has led to a great emotional closeness between the followers of another religion and our community. Everywhere you go, you are offered a cup of tea. You drink an ocean of tea every day because you are offered tea in all corners of the city. The approach, the way in which you get closer, reveals the way we ourselves approached it in the first place. Which is by having full trust. A pleasant, comforting, and exciting surprise that makes you want to continue to work all the way in this direction. As an African, I am used to talking to everyone I meet on my way, whether he is small or large. Being friars minor here also means the possibility of learning the wealth of others, the wealth of the Turkish Muslim, especially at a time when the image of Turkey in the Western world is not so clear. A good part of our time is devoted to visiting the places of worship of other communities. Churches, synagogues, mosques, because it is there that we find those we wish to meet, people we wish to get to know better. And this too is very much part of our Franciscan experience. It is actually our way. Our house is dedicated to interreligious and ecumenical dialogue and is constantly in contact with people of Islam, with Jews, and with different Christian denominations, ecclesial communities, or Christian churches. It is a completely different reality from the one in which we, at least I, were normally used to. And it leads us to discover other parameters of life. One of these is apostolicity, which is something different from being a shepherd. A shepherd looks after his flock. He tries to round it up, to make it grow, to protect it from mistakes and from injustice. Here, the flock is very small and practically made up of people from religious communities that have their own way of life, a personal autonomy. That is why they place us in a situation of constant openness to dialogue. One lives minority in a different way, and in the apostolic life. Being a brother means the possibility and the necessity of providing creativity. The apostle is someone who opens the way, who proposes, who becomes involved. He does not have to do much. He has to open roads, invent meetings, possibilities. In some way, the community is strongly active in these activities. It is the way of life of this community. Dear brothers, dear sisters, friends and all, peace and goodwill. Our community here in Istanbul is truly responding to the objectives set. Now the Lord has given us new fellow brothers, and this will certainly enrich every aspect of the life of our fraternity. These 10 years of existence have been very fruitful, and now, with our new fellow brothers, it will be even more so. After centuries of great contrast with the Ottoman Empire, and in more recent years with the government of the Republic of Turkey, the idea of a community based on respect and mutual understanding now seems feasible. What a surprise when someone in the street greeted me and asked me, "But what religion are you? Christian?" For the first time, I could open my mouth and declare, "Yes, I'm a Christian." I believe that to profess one's own faith, together with others who profess other faiths, and to feel such a strong desire to describe the evangelical journey, is an intensive moment for everyone, and a reason for joy. From the beginning, 8 centuries ago, the Franciscans have always distinguished themselves in the dialogue of life and with life. They went to the East to live as Christians among Muslims. And in the rule, St. Francis says, "Go and behave as Christians, and confess that they are Christians, and when the Lord gives them a sign, that is the moment to preach. They will preach, but the important thing is dialogue with life." The way in which the encounter takes place is first of all personal and emotional. It is like saying, "Well, first let's have a coffee. Then we'll talk about the rest." An encounter which builds friendship, which builds closeness. It is a way, I think, very Franciscan of seeing the person first in his depth, in his faith, in his knowledge, so as to establish an encounter in which this knowledge grows, this spirituality consolidates in a diversity that can build bridges and new things. Everyone has his own wealth, a chance to converse according to one's ability and character. It is something I experience every day. The word dialogue means to listen. To communicate, you need to open your ears, open your heart in order to listen to the others, to actually hear him, and to hear myself speak about my beliefs. The Acts of the Apostles say that at Antioch the disciples were called Christians for the first time. And from Antioch, the apostolic preaching spread to the West throughout Asia. Over the centuries, marked by the complexity of a history full of invasions, conquests, conflicts, the Turkish territory saw the origin of the Church, its first development, and the recognition of Christianity as the official religion of the Eastern Roman Empire, up to the fall of Constantinople in 1453 by the Ottomans. At present, Christians are a small minority.
In Turkey, sometimes it's difficult to live as a converted person, because they are asking your name and you are saying, "My name is Şule," it's the Turkish name, and they are asking, "Why are your children have different name?" Because I'm Christian, and all of their name have their own story, and it's difficult to explain it. Sometimes my neighbor, my aunt, my uncle, and the others ignore my religion They don't like to talk about it. Mostly my friends are asking, you are not a dominant person because you accepted your husband's religion. But I know God called me from my childhood. In Kurtuluş, that is a special place in Istanbul, because there are minority people that Christians are major. We are major in Kurtuluş. Whenever Easter comes, every street smells Easter pastry. We go to our neighbors, bring some eggs painted.
Since the 4th century, when Byzantium changed its name to Constantinople, which then changed its name officially to Istanbul in 1930, the city is seat of the Ecumenical Patriarchate and of other Orthodox churches, such as the Greek Orthodox Church and the Armenian Apostolic Church, whereas the Syrian Orthodox monks here have their metropolitan. The Catholic Church has 3 dioceses in Turkey: Istanbul, Izmir, and Iskenderun, although the latter has currently only one apostolic administrator. Some ecclesial communities born out of the Reformation are present on the territory: Anglicans, Lutherans, and several groups from the Pentecostal churches. Here in the land where we have been sent, in order to work in the Lord's vineyard, we have to learn to trust one another. It is trust that leads the encounter with other religions and with churches and ecclesial communities of this city, in particular the Eastern ones. Ecumenism is a recent milestone in the history of the Church. At the time of Francis, the Protestant Reformation was yet to emerge, and the schism of the Eastern Church was not yet well defined. However, St. Bonaventura in 1274, during the Second Council of Lyon, worked to reconcile the Eastern and Western divisions of the Church. Today, after almost 1,000 years of separation, all the churches cultivate a common hope for unity while respecting diversity. Fostering relationships with the Greek Orthodox Church led to the start of the International Fraternity of St. Mary Draperis, which today is also well received by the Armenian Apostolic and Syrian churches. Follow the recommendations of the Gospel and St. Francis is what we must do during the encounter and on the road to dialogue. St. Francis went to Egypt driven by the idea of showing his non-Christian brothers that Jesus loved them. My mission is to mainly address Muslims, even though here in Istanbul the horizon is much wider, with the presence of other churches and other religions. As far as Muslims are concerned, my mission is to show that I can meet them selflessly as brothers. I believe this is the example of St. Francis, the primary purpose, which can be the purpose of an entire lifetime, and that is what happened to me, to meet them and tell them that Christ loves them. Characterizing the relationship with Islam is first of all the spiritual dimension, the cornerstone to building relationships of hope and universal brotherhood, starting from what unites faith and prayer. The aim is universal brotherhood, to walk towards God with people of other religions. It is not to fill my church, but to step towards God, helped by the person who is on the journey with me. When you meet people that are on their own personal spiritual journey, and you can sense their closeness, one can move forward together. This is what happened to me with the Sheikh, the Dede, as he is called here, belonging to the group of the whirling dervishes that we frequent. Being able to walk together means being able to talk about our faith, but not in a convincing way, but by expressing what we feel from a spiritual point of view. I continue to believe that my encounter, in order to be completely Christian and completely Franciscan, must be a spiritual encounter. And this is why, for example, in all simplicity, I ask a Muslim to pray for me, and I pray for him. In the annual Islamic Christian Symposium organized by the Franciscan family in Istanbul, Friars Minor, Conventional Friars and Capuchin Friars, moments of Muslim prayer in the mosque and moments of Christian prayer in the churches are shared.
Quand je vais à la mosquée, par exemple, que je suis en prière,
when I am in a mosque and it is time for the canonical prayer, the Muslims pray in front of me. I stand to one side without moving, but I advise God of all that is positive in the lives of these men and women and ask Him to purify that which may be negative. This is an evangelical journey for me. It is a way of stepping towards God by involving and allowing ourselves to be involved by the prayer of others. In the mosque, I feel closer to God, whom we venerate together. My prayer joins the prayers of this Muslim community, and I think that God receives only one unique prayer. We have received a very brotherly welcome in the different places of worship. In mosques as well as in synagogues, and in places with even smaller groups, which express their religion more intensely, such as the Alevi population, and even this mystical dimension of Islam called Sufism. Alevism is considered one of the many branches of Islam. With a controversial origin for the majority of historians linked to primitive Islam and a history consisting of persecution, Alevism in Turkey now has at least 10 million followers and gathers various religious traditions of both Islam and Judaism, along with elements of Christianity and of ancient animist religions. The religious service takes place in a house of gathering called Cemeve. The ceremony, Ayini Cem, or simply Cem, includes the semah, ritual dances to the sound of the baklama, where men and women dance together, turning and swirling. The Alevi belief is difficult to define because the movement, that has no central authority, has many subgroupings and different origins. However, a spiritual journey can be identified: yol, street, which passes through 4 main stages of life or gates: Shariat, religious law; Tarikat, spiritual brotherhood; Marifat, spiritual knowledge; Hakikat, reality or truth, or God. In the experience of the Friars Minor of Istanbul, the Alevis are distinguished for their openness and closeness to other religions and for the promotion of a peaceful coexistence. God is mystery. God has created diversity. In his own image, man is a mystery. Diversity is not a problem. It is an occasion of reciprocal enrichment. For us here, to understand him means a change of mentality, which is a good thing when it happens. I think that in this sense, the Church understands, or at least is beginning to understand, that there are structures that need to be reviewed with regard to a deeper evangelization that is more appropriate to our time.
profunde y acorde a nuestro tiempo.
Structures that may now say little are to open up to a much more fertile dialogue.
Abrirlas a un diálogo mucho más fecundo.
The whirling dervishes are followers of fellow Islamic brothers related to Sufism, the mystical form of research typical of Islam. In Farsi, the term dervish means one who goes from door to door, and spiritually means one who seeks the transition from the passions of the material world to the reunification with the supreme love of God. Founded by Mevlana Celaleddin-i Rumi around 1215 in Konya in central Anatolia, the dervishes carry out the famous whirling dance as a method of reaching mystical ecstasy and are still very much present in Turkey. The encounter with the Fraternity of St. Mary Draperis took place through Dede Nail Kesova, which soon transformed into a true friendship and spiritual sharing. I saw the whirling dervishes for the first time in their old convent converted into a museum. They were performing a dance, their ritual for tourists. And I said to myself, I would like to meet with these men, if possible, to understand their spirituality. I would like to meet them as a religious Christian. And I talked about it with a friend who accompanied me to the Dede, the leader of the whirling dervishes group. We talked a little. He intended to come to our Mass. I replied, in 2 weeks' time, the parish community will celebrate my birthday. I'll be 70 years old. It will be a little more solemn, but please come. And I told him that it would be nice if he wore his dervish costume during the ceremony. He came and wore his dervish costume. A few months later, we celebrated my jubilee of religious life. I asked Dede if he would perform a small part of their dance immediately after the Mass. He came with 2 musicians and one of his disciples, a whirling dervish, and so they performed a part of the ritual for the first time in a Christian church of Istanbul. The following year, we noticed the coincidence of our course with the anniversary of the World Day of Prayer in Assisi on the 27th of October. So I asked Dede, would you accept to celebrate together with us? He said yes, and that is how the tradition of this ceremony began. A rather unique experience where we enter the church together, in our own outfits, the Franciscan habit and that of the whirling dervish. I present 3 icons, the icon of St. Francis and of the Sultan, the icon of Abraham, and the icon of the Virgin Mary, made by an Orthodox lady. Then a brief dervish melody begins, and the first part of the Franciscans begins, where some songs are sung in Latin, the expression of desire for peace and brotherhood. The second part is entrusted to the whirling dervishes, who perform a good part of their ritual, the Samah, a dance which evokes the stars around the sun and creatures around God. Between the 2 parties, we usually sing the canticle of the creatures by St. Francis, because I think there are many similarities between the spirituality of the whirling dervishes and that of the Franciscans. In the third part, we all go back together, Franciscans and dervishes, in the aisle for the kiss of peace. We sing the prayer of St. Francis, "Make me an instrument of your peace."
Fais de moi un instrument de ta paix.
And after we kiss whilst singing the Alleluia, and we say goodbye.
Nous repartons.
To profess faith together with others who profess other religions, and to remain with this desire to describe the evangelical journey. I believe this is a deep moment and a reason of joy for all. Since its beginning, the Fraternity of Istanbul has emerged as a point of reference for those in the order wishing to learn more and experience the reality of the Orthodox and Islamic worlds. Every year since 2005, the Fraternity organizes a training course on ecumenical and interreligious dialogue that allows a concrete and direct dialogue with Islam, Judaism, and Buddhism. A significant part of the course is represented by the ecumenical dimension, both in the relations with the Eastern churches and with the churches of the Reformation, present in Istanbul. A few editions ago, the course also welcomed non-religious collaborators of the friars and anyone interested in the dialogue of the Franciscan charism. The course is designed for a number of 20 participants, in order to be able to better accompany them in their journey, to spend time with them, offer reflections, workshops, moments of prayer, visits. Our order has gradually shown more interest for the course, that also sees the participation of conventuals, of brothers of the Anglican community, the Society of St. Francis, already present in the past 5 editions, and the Sisters of the Franciscan religious communities. The project that the Order has prepared for the formation of all the brothers refers to a complete formation as required by Franciscan life, formation in Franciscan life, and in living as a Franciscan. In this integral dimension, formation in dialogue is essential. St. Francis was the first founder to devote an entire chapter of the rule precisely to Missio ad Gentes. The mission is an essential element of our charism, and today his name means dialogue. So this element must be part of the formation of the Friar Minor. This must not be merely a theoretical formation towards dialogue, but also a formation supported by concrete experiences. My Franciscan congregation was founded in 1898 in the United States by an Anglican clergyman with the intention of coming into communion with the Catholic Church. In 1908, the Week of Prayer for Christian Unity was initiated, which is celebrated every year from the 18th to the 25th of January. The purpose of our congregation is to pray, work for the unity of Christians, and spread this message during our mission, so that only one reality exists among the believers of Christ, so that the world may believe. And somehow, I think that Francis today would be our first trainer. He sent his fellow brothers to unknown countries to bear witness of the love that Christ has for all, anywhere, and to everyone. This is the deep message of the gospel.
Quando ero maestro dei post-novizi,
As an instructor of post-novices, I found myself wondering how to help young monks in their life of prayer.
posso aiutare i giovani frati nel crescere della vita della preghiera. Ho cominciato
I contacted some instructors of Buddhism and Zen.
maestri dei buddisti. Ho trovato qualche maestro dello Zen, quindi
And I invited them to lead our annual spiritual retreat.
al nostro convento di guidare nostro esercizio spirituale annuale. Una volta
This meeting is now a tradition.
proprio
Once, we also visited a Buddhist meditation center,
buddista
where we experienced saying prayers with the monks.
monaci buddisti, preghiera. Poi
During my sabbatical year, I had the opportunity to go to India, Nepal, Myanmar,
India, Nepal, Myanmar.
and I can now say
In Myanmar
I grew up in personal prayer.
sono cresciuto nella vita della preghiera personale.
I'm very pleased to be here again and again. What does it mean, Ecumenical Patriarchate? Of Constantinople. Ecumenical Patriarchate is the most ancient Christian foundation in this city. Almost 17 centuries is here, walks and gives the testimony of the faith of the Christ, gives the help to the people that they need to know about Christ. We can say it is the center, the administrative center or collaborated center among the Orthodox local autocephalous churches, among the patriarchates of the East and the new patriarchates. I think that the presence of the Franciscan brotherness here is very important. I can say that every time that I'm coming here, I feel very warm, very open. I have the feeling that I'm coming in a family. These meetings of people that belongs to other, maybe, cultural heritages or cultural backgrounds, but they have a common thing, the faith in the Christ, and also the love and the adoration of St. Francis of Assisi is very basic. The testimony of your fraternity here is very important, and I think that hope and pray that God gives not only the blessing, but also gives fruits more and more to your service and your testimony.
To speak to Franciscans of Muslim mystics, of Sufism, in the areas where I have studied for years and where I will continue to study for years to come, is like speaking to a truly mystical assembly in itself. I am aware of how a Franciscan is inherently open to spiritual encounter. For years now, I present Sufism and the mystical dimension of Islam to many and different types of assemblies, whether it is at school or in faculties or to other religious orders. But with Franciscans, I realize that I am standing in front of an audience, so to say, which is itself inherently suited to welcoming another spiritual tradition, that is, the Franciscan. I seem to perceive, and this is a grace that the Franciscan order is endowed with, that you find yourself in front of men and women who are immediately involved in spiritual life, in the search for God. in the sincere search for God that goes beyond religious differences that may hinder the encounter. So for me, it is a real joy to listen to Franciscans react, observe, and make observations to what I say, because they are always constructive observations, particularly for those who live a certain spiritual quest. And for me, it is really a grace, and it is a success in terms of order and in terms of the Church, as well as for all those involved.
And Posta Gelasokak, this is the street where people walk down to come and worship in the church building that we use on Sunday mornings for worship. And for the past 152 years, we've been using the Dutch chapel as a place of worship. And from the very beginning, the church was intended to be an international church. And currently we have 2 English services. We have a 9:30 service, and also at 11 o'clock there's a service. And people from about 40 different nations attend these services. We realize when we come to Istanbul that history is very important, and especially the church history. And for us as a church, it's very important to seek unity with the churches, especially those who have been here long before us, even though with Christians from different traditions and different backgrounds. And one of the ways in which we do it is our participation during the Ecumenical week. And then also more informally, we relate with the other churches throughout the year. But it is something that I think it's by and large unique to Istanbul, is that churches get together so often. And perhaps because we are small in numbers, we realize more the need to express our unity in Christ. And to get to my house, I need to walk past the buildings that are used by the Franciscan community. Once a month there's a Teze worship service, and we like to participate at the service. But also on a more personal level, it is really good to have Christians from other traditions in our neighborhood. We celebrate together, for example, the feast of St. Francis, and also at other times we have informal meals together. So we are very grateful for this opportunity also to relate with the Franciscan brothers here in Istanbul.
The Society of St. Francis was founded in 1937. The father-founder was named Algie Robertson, and he brought together these 4 religious communities. Our principles, which is our rule, come from the Christa Prima Siva Sangha in Pune, India. We are the largest religious order taking life profession for men in the Anglican Communion. The Society of St. Francis is engaged in the ecumenical movement in several different ways. First, in prayer. We pray for not only our own Archbishop of Canterbury and our local Archbishop or presiding bishop of the Anglican province in which we live. We pray for the Ecumenical Patriarch, and we pray for the leaders of the other Protestant and Reformed churches. Another thing that we do is we engage with other Christians, regardless of their denomination. With Roman Catholics, where we work very closely with Franciscans International, doing work for an advocacy for social justice. With other Christian denominations, it's at a local level. We do work together in soup kitchens, in shelters, in environmental projects, and a lot of practical projects that are born at the local level. We also have in our house in Dorset, an interfaith environmental project, which brings people of different religions together. I'm really honored to have been invited, and I find it really humbling at the commitment of time and resources of the Order of Friars Minor, and especially the brothers in this friary, which of course is the fruit of your own prayer and your own commitment to the interreligious and ecumenical dialogue, and to share with brothers and sisters from all over the world. It's been a truly humbling and invigorating and inspiring and empowering experience. I'm going to write this up as a little bit of a jump starter for my brothers in the Society of St. Francis. I'm going to give them some of the very good ideas and some of the inspiration that I received, I hope to share with my brothers throughout the world.
I invite the friars, especially the young friars, to participate in this course. I encourage the provincial ministers and custodians to persuade the young friars to participate, because it will be of great benefit to them. This is a course that takes place in a particularly appropriate context. In Istanbul, they will get to know our fellow brothers, our Eastern brothers, in particular the Greek Orthodox, but also Muslims and Jews. It is truly a great setting for formation in dialogue. One can well understand that this is a moment of grace. The moment to begin to walk together through what unites us, specifically with the Orthodox world, walking in the same faith, in Christ, and resolving, as far as we can, differences, conflicts, but above all, abandoning any suspicion, to make room for trust. We begin to understand the meaning of the action of the Spirit in humanity beyond structures, beyond our thoughts or reasoning, because we learn to recognize and appreciate the good that the Spirit has in others who are not like us, who are not Christians, and who are not Catholic. The richness of the Spirit also lives in them. It is difficult, but at the same time it is fascinating, because it is a constant challenge for creativity and one's own freedom to give oneself differently, especially knowing that one builds without being sure of seeing the results. It is like starting to build a temple and knowing that you will never see it finished, but that it will be continued by others. It is, however, a door that opens. In this sense, it seems to me that one is building not according to human calculation, but based on the trust that what God has accomplished in a person, and which we all already experience. God accomplishes it in everything that person does. To me, everything that is uncertain or doubtful transforms into hope. To learn to trust in what we believe in a faith that grows and leads us to sharing this joy. I would like to make a wish that our fraternity in Istanbul continues with this wonderful mission of ecumenical and interreligious dialogue, that our fraternity in Istanbul continues to follow up this special identity of the fraternity in a much wider context of the Franciscan identity. That our fraternity of Istanbul becomes even more Franciscan every day. More missionary and more open to ecumenical and interreligious dialogue. I would like to thank each and every one of my fellow brothers who are involved in this mission. And I give them the blessing of the Father, St. Francis, so that the Lord will continue to bless their work of reconciliation, of peace and goodwill among all men and women of goodwill.
Continui a benedire il loro lavoro di riconciliazione, di pace e bene tra tutti gli uomini e donne.
Dear friends, dear brothers, I will finish as I began. Peace and goodwill.
Pace e bene.